Okay, let's dive in. Imagine a city. It once felt vibrant, but now you can almost smell the damp coal and this simmering, brittle resentment. We're exploring something called the inheritance of rust today. It's really about how a whole society can um, gradually just corrode, become something else entirely. Our mission here is to pull out the key pieces that show how this kind of rust spreads, using this really compelling narrative as our guide.
Yeah, and it's important to remember this source material, it isn't just a story. It's more like a framework, you know? It shows us the mechanics of how societies decay, but through the eyes of three main characters. We have Elias, he's a retired history teacher. Then there's Lena, a former student kind of searching for her place, and Marcus, a journalist, you know, trying to fight for the truth. And as we go, keep an ear out for what the source calls reinforcing loops. Think of them like vicious cycles, where one bad thing feeds back and makes another bad thing even stronger, accelerating the whole downward spiral.
Right, so let's start at the beginning. The core problem, the foundation, seems to be this massive economic hardship after the city's steelworks closed down. You've got a whole generation, Lena included, just, well, left adrift, as the source puts it. And their pride is sort of curdled into this real anger. So how did that initial understandable frustration get twisted into something, well, darker?
That's exactly the pivot, isn't it? The narrative really focuses on that. This initial public discontent, I mean, these were legitimate, small, desperate cries for help. It became fertile ground. Then this new voice emerges, very charismatic, not offering real economic solutions, mind you, but promising glory.
Right.
And talking about national humiliation, betrayal, you know, skillfully shifting the blame away from, say, economic policy failures.
Okay, and while this is simmering, the story digs into how that anger got directed. This is where Lena's part of the story, feeling useless, takes a really unsettling turn. The movement, it seems, gave her a really clear target. It points to the families from the East End, the ones with different accents and different holidays. And the text explicitly says, it felt good to have an enemy. It felt better than feeling useless.
Wow. Right. And what's really insidious here, and this is where the source brings in R2, scapegoating reinforcement. It's not just that they found someone to blame, it's how the very act of blaming fuels the engine of their own, well, oppression, in a way. The more people like Lena grabbed onto these simple, hateful answers, the more they loved the leader providing them. And this growing support for fascism, it directly paid for more propaganda and disinformation.
Right.
You know, the radio shows, the pamphlets, all that poison. It's like a feedback loop.
So as that propaganda machine ramps up,
Yeah.
what about people like Marcus?
Yeah.
Journalists trying to, counter the lies.
Yeah, his story is tough. The narrative shows his efforts were just drowned out, partly by the sheer noise, but also by direct attacks. They called him a traitor, undermined his credibility, and then it escalated to political violence. The source describes his printing press being torched.
Right.
Which isn't just vandalism, right? It's a direct hit against the strength of democratic institutions. And these institutions were already shaky because trust was, well, crumbling.
And that violence, it wasn't just isolated incidents, was it? The source suggests it created its own momentum. It calls it R1, the fear engine. You have these paramilitary guys, black shirts, patrolling, using fists and clubs. And that physical threat, it starts to change what people even value. Suddenly feeling safe feels maybe more important than freedom itself. A huge shift.
Absolutely. And that pervasive fear and insecurity, it twisted perceptions. Suddenly, the movement's promise of absolute control, it starts to sound like salvation, not a threat anymore. And that feeling directly fuels R3, democratic erosion. The judiciary gets intimidated, stops prosecuting the thugs. The press gets weaker, stops reporting the crimes. Those essential democratic guardrails, they just get dismantled piece by piece. Not with a bang, really, but just quietly giving way.
And the final twist, the really tragic irony the narrative points out, is R5. Instability breeds hardship. The very violence that was supposed to bring back order, it ends up crippling the city even more. Businesses shut down. Investors run scared. So the economic hardship that kicked the whole thing off, it actually got worse because of the supposed solution.
Yes. And what's fascinating, in a grim way, is how the propaganda machine had an answer even for that. Suddenly, the new hardship is because of saboteurs or the lingering influence of those scapegoated families. And Lena, who's now, a uniformed party functionary, she believes it because the alternative, seeing the real cause, it's just too much to face.
So we follow Elias, the old teacher, just watching as his city goes from this vibrant chaos to being orderly, silent, and gray.
Mm-hmm.
And he sees Lena herding these kids marching in joyless sync. It's such a stark picture of a society that's basically eaten its own soul.
Mm-hmm. What this deep dive really shows, I think, is how this cascade of reinforcing loops, scapegoating, feeding fear, fear enabling democratic erosion, can turn that initial discontent into this kind of suffocating, quiet control. It really pushes us to look deeper, doesn't it? To see the interconnected forces when things start to go wrong in a society facing big changes.
Yeah, the inheritance of rust.
Yeah.
It's not just some story set somewhere else. It really does feel like a mirror. And it leaves you with this thought, maybe. What are the rust-colored banners starting to appear in our own world? What silent inheritances are maybe being forged right now that we aren't quite seeing yet?